Hello everyone, my name is Dattaprasad Arsekar. I'm currently pursuing BSc Economics at Kokle Institute in Deccan Gymkhana, Pune. Today I'll be presenting my investment banking financial model on PepsiCo. This project was given by LaunchedGlobal while I was enrolled in the course of Investment Banking with Finance. To begin with, the object of this project was to build a complete three-statement financial model using historical financial statements and a set of forecasting assumptions. Rather than manually entering projected financial statements, we first had the assumptions and indeed also created them, then allowed Excel formulas to calculate every projected number automatically in each of the schedules provided and which we had to work on. Every worksheet links together. So changing one assumption automatically updates the income statement, balance sheet, cash flow statement, and ratio analysis as well. The model follows the same framework used in investment banking where assumptions drive supporting schedules feed the financial statements, and the financial statements produce the key financial ratios used to evaluate the company. It was indeed a practical application of what many chartered financial analysts, CFA, expect and do in everyday life as well. Setting the foundation through assumptions. Everything begins inside the assumption tab. This is the only worksheet where future values are entered manually. Instead of forecasting every financial statement line individually, we forecast the business drivers. Some key things that we have noticed so far. Firstly, the revenue growth is assumed to increase by 15.3% in 2019 before stabilizing at 3% annually. Another thing that we have taken in consideration is cost of goods sold COGS is fixed at 41.8% of revenue, while SG&A remains 38.2% of revenue. Capital expenditure is projected at 5.1% of sales, while depreciation is estimated at 13% of beginning PP&E. Operating current assets equals 16.9% of sales, whereas operating current liabilities equal 28% of sales. Lastly, dividends are set at around 65% of net income, and long-term debt remains unchanged throughout the forecast. Once these assumptions are entered, Excel calculates every future balance automatically without manually typing any projected financial statement numbers. These assumptions serve as the foundation of the entire financial model because every worksheet references them through formulas, which you will see in further slides. Derived calculations from the assumptions. After completing the assumptions, we move to the calculation worksheet. This worksheet converts our assumptions into projected balances. Key things to note down as formulas. For property, plant, and equipment, Excel starts with beginning PP&E from the previous year. Capital expenditure is calculated then by multiplying revenue by the capex percentage. Later on, depreciation is calculated using beginning PP&E multiplied by the depreciation percentage. Finally, ending PP&E is calculated as beginning PP&E plus capital expenditure minus depreciation. The ending PP&E balance then links directly to the balance sheet. Operating current assets and current liabilities are also calculated by multiplying projected revenue by the respective assumption percentages. This worksheet, therefore, is very significant as it acts as the bridge between the assumptions and the financial statement. As we have completed key formulas, now let's get to the interpretation part. Looking at the calculated numbers in the calculation tab, you observe that the capital expenditure consistently exceeds depreciation. Capital spending rises from approximately $3.4 billion to nearly $3.9 billion, while depreciation remains very low. As a result, net PP&E grows from roughly $17.5 billion to almost $23 billion by 2023. This indicates that PepsiCo is continuously investing in expanding and modernizing its product facilities rather than simply replacing old assets. Another important observation is that operating current liabilities remain higher than the operating current assets throughout the forecast. This creates a permanently negative operating working capital position. Rather than signaling weakness, this reflects PepsiCo's strong bargaining power with suppliers. The company effectively finances part of its daily operations using supply credit, creating an interest-free source of financing as well. Let's go on to the next slide. Evaluation of the company's debt structure. Next, we build the debt schedule. This worksheet tracks all debt balances together with their interest expense. To note down important things, long-term debt remains constant because our assumptions specify no additional borrowing in the assumption. As well, short-term debt also remains unchanged. The important formula here is about the interest expense, which is calculated by multiplying each debt balance by its corresponding interest rate. Some key considerations. Typically, cash balances generate interest income until available cash is exhausted. When projected cash falls below zero, Excel automatically introduces a revolver balance. Basically, the revolver represents short-term borrowings used to maintain liquidity and keep the balance sheet balanced. This revolver balance links directly into both the balance sheet and cash flow statement, which we'll be talking later on. But before getting any further, let's interpret the numbers we got so far in our debt schedule. First of all, the projected results show that long-term debt remains constant approximately $28.3 billion, demonstrating that management is not relying on additional long-term borrowing to finance future growth. However, cash balances gradually decline until reaching zero in 2020, meaning historical cash reserves are fully utilized. Because operating cash alone cannot fund all investments and dividend payments, the revolver balance rises to nearly $5.8 billion before gradually declining. This indicates temporary reliance on short-term financing rather than permanent increases in long-term debt. Overall, PepsiCo maintains a conservative debt structure by using flexible bank credit only when necessary, which shows its strong foundation in terms of solvency. Now, moving on, decoding the income statement. Once all supporting schedules are complete, we prepare the projected income statement. There are some key formulas now which we'll be talking about. To be clear, revenue is forecasted using the assumed growth rates given. Cost of goods sold equals revenue multiplied by the COGS percentage. SG&A is calculated as revenue multiplied by the SG&A percentage. Depreciation comes directly from the calculations worksheet. EBITDA is calculated after subtracting COGS and SG&A from the revenue. EBIT equals EBITDA less depreciation. Interest expense and interest income comes from the debt schedule itself. Taxes are calculated using the assumed tax rate. And finally, net income becomes the starting point for both the cash flow statement and retained earning on the balance sheet. Let's go on to the interpretation part. So we have seen that revenue grows steadily each year due to our projected growth assumptions. Since operating margins remain constant, EBITDA increases from approximately $13.1 billion to over $15.2 billion. It is very clear that net income temporarily declines during 2019, but this is largely caused by tax normalization rather than weaker business operations. As operating performance continues improving, net income gradually recovers over the remaining forecast years, which we can clearly see through the numbers. Regarding dividend, we can see that dividend payments also increase because they are directly tied to the net income through the fixed 65% payout ratio. Overall, the income statement demonstrates that PepsiCo maintains a stable and profitable operation business throughout the forecast period as per the given numbers and the calculations they are calculated. Peeling back the layers of the balance sheet. The balance sheet is built entirely from linked schedules rather than manual entries. This is the key thing to know about balance sheet. Cash comes directly from the cash flow statement. Operating current assets and PP&E comes from the calculation worksheet. Long-term debt and revolver balances come from the debt schedule. Retained earnings increase by adding net income and subtracting dividends. Total assets must always equal total liabilities plus shareholders' equity. We verify this using the balance sheet row, which should always equal zero. Let's go to the interpretation again. During the forecast period, total assets initially decline because cash reserves are used to finance capital investment and shareholder distribution. To maintain accounting balance, the revolver automatically increases whenever additional financing becomes necessary. Shareholders' equity as well declined significantly during 2020 because dividend payments remained relatively high while earnings remained temporarily weakened. Most importantly, the balance sheet remains exactly zero throughout every projected year. In conclusion, this signifies and confirms that every worksheet is correctly linked and that the entire financial model maintains complete accounting accuracy. Cash flow under the microscope. Cash flow statement begins with the net income from the income statement. Since depreciation is a non-cash expense, it is added back. Changes in operating working capital are then incorporated. Capital expenditures are deducted as investing cash outflows. Financing activities include dividends and any revolver borrowing. The result is ending cash, which links directly back into the balance sheet. Key interpretation. Although PepsiCo consistently generates positive operating cash flows, capital expenditure remains very large every year. Moreover, combined with generous dividend payments, these cash outflows exceed internally generated cash during several forecast periods. As a result, PepsiCo gradually exhausts its historical cash reserves and eventually relies on revolving credit facility. Therefore, while operations remain healthy, aggressive investment and shareholder distributions create temporarily pressure on the liquidity. This is something to really consider and is a significant concern. Beyond the numbers, the ratio analysis. After completing all three financial statements, we calculate the financial ratios. These ratios summarize the company's profitability, efficiency, leverage, liquidity, and shareholder returns. Because every ratio references the completed financial statements, they automatically update whenever assumptions change. Interpretation. EBITDA margin remains constant at approximately 17.9%, demonstrating highly consistent operating profitability. Gross debt to EBITDA gradually declines from approximately 2.75 times to 2.43 times, showing that earnings are growing faster than debt obligations. Interest coverage improves each year, meaning PepsiCo can comfortably meet all of its interest payments as well. Regarding return on equity, It becomes unusually high during certain years because shareholders' equity declines significantly, mathematically increasing the ratio. This increase actually reflects accounting mechanics rather than a dramatic improvement in profitability. Overall, the ratio suggests that PepsiCo remains financially strong, operationally efficient, and capable of supporting future growth while maintaining manageable leverage. Final conclusion. In summary, this financial model demonstrates how a single set of business assumptions follows through every supporting schedule and ultimately produces fully integrated financial statements. Every number in the income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statement and ratio analysis is interconnected through Excel formulas. This means that changing just one assumption, such as revenue growth, capital expenditure, or margins, automatically updates the entire model. Looking beyond the mechanics, the model tells a clear story about PepsiCo's financial condition. PepsiCo is a fundamentally strong, profitable, and operationally efficient company with predictable revenue growth, stable margins, and excellent debt servicing capacity. The company's primary challenge is not profitability but capital allocation. The management aggressively reinvests in expanding its business while simultaneously maintaining generous dividend payments to shareholders. The strategy indeed temporarily reduces cash reserves and creates a need for short term revolving credit facilities. However, this is not a sign of financial distress. It reflects management's confidence that future operating cash flows will continue to support both growth and shareholder returns. Overall, the PepsiCo company appears financially resilient, strategically disciplined, and well positioned for sustainable long term growth. The financial models clearly suggest a company that can continue creating value for shareholders while investing in its future, provided that it maintains disciplined cash flow management and prudent financing decisions. Thank you, and see you all soon.